The Montana morning arrived with a bitter chill as Jack Harmon made his way across the frost-covered ranch. At 58, the lines on his weathered face told stories of both joy and sorrow. 3 years had passed since his wife Sarah's death, but the ranch house still echoed with emptiness despite the constant work that kept his hands busy and his mind occupied. The rising sun cast long shadows across the sprawling property, 200 acres of rolling pastureland bordered by pine forests and the distant silhouette of the Crazy Mountains. Jack had been born in this house, raised on this land, and intended to die here someday. It was in his blood, this connection to the soil and sky of Montana. Jack's daily routine remained unchanged. Coffee at dawn, feeding the livestock, mending fences, and tending to the cattle that had sustained the Harmon family for 3 generations. The neighboring ranchers often suggested he sell and move closer to town, but this land was all he had left of the life he'd built with Sarah. "Morning, Rusty," Jack murmured to his aging border collie, who trailed faithfully at his heels. The dog had been Sarah's last gift to him, a puppy she'd brought home just months before her diagnosis. Now Rusty was his constant companion, the only witness to the quiet conversations Jack still had with his wife when the loneliness pressed in too close. That Wednesday morning in late October began like any other until Jack noticed something unusual near the edge of his property. A small figure huddled against the fence post, motionless in the morning fog. Rusty tensed, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Easy boy," Jack whispered, patting the dog's head. Approaching cautiously, he discovered a girl, no more than 14, asleep or unconscious, her threadbare jacket offering little protection against the autumn cold. Her skin had the pallid, waxy appearance of someone who'd been exposed to the elements too long. "Hey there," Jack called, keeping his distance. The girl startled awake, eyes wide with fear. She scrambled backward, clutching a small backpack to her chest. Rusty barked once, making her flinch. "Rusty, quiet," Jack commanded, then turned back to the girl. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said, hands raised. "You're on private property. My ranch." The girl didn't speak. Her dark hair was matted, her jeans torn at the knees. But it was the piece of paper pinned to her jacket that caught Jack's attention. "She's a thief. Don't trust her." The words were written in blue ink, the letters precise and deliberate. Jack had seen enough cruelty in his life to recognize it when it was pinned to a child's chest. "You got a name?" he asked, his voice gentler now. The girl remained silent, eyes darting between Jack and the dirt road leading away from the ranch. She looked ready to bolt despite the exhaustion evident in her slumped shoulders. "You hungry?" he asked. When her gaze flickered at the mention of food, Jack nodded to himself. "Come on then. Could use some company for breakfast anyway." He glanced at the distant mountains where dark clouds were gathering. Storms coming. Not a good day to be outside. As he turned toward the house, he wasn't sure she'd follow. But the sound of hesitant footsteps behind him confirmed she was too hungry to run. Jack didn't look back, giving her the dignity of choice. Rusty, sensing Jack's acceptance of the stranger, fell in line behind the girl as if to ensure she didn't stray. The farmhouse stood stoic against the horizon, a 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and faded blue paint that Sarah had chosen 15 years ago. Jack had been meaning to repaint it, but somehow never found the time. Or perhaps he wasn't ready to erase that last decision Sarah had made about their home. In the kitchen, he scrambled eggs and fried bacon, setting a plate on the table without ceremony. The room was warm and lived in, with mismatched chairs and a collection of coffee mugs hanging on hooks beneath the cabinets. The walls were adorned with photographs spanning decades, 3 generations of Harmons working the same land. "Eat," he said simply, pushing the plate toward the girl. The girl, still silent, devoured the food with such desperation that Jack had to turn away, swallowing the lump in his throat. He'd seen hungry people before, but not like this. Not in America. Not a child. Her fingers trembled as she shoveled eggs into her mouth, her eyes never leaving the plate, as if afraid the food might disappear if she looked away. Jack busied himself at the stove, giving her privacy in her hunger. He remembered his own father's words, "A man's dignity is sometimes all he has. Don't take that from him even when you're helping." The same, he figured, applied to young girls with notes pinned to their jackets. "There's more if you want it," he said, pouring her a glass of orange juice. He set it down alongside the empty plate she'd already cleared. "And after that, we can talk about why you're wearing that note." The girl's eyes met his for the first time, dark brown and wary, assessing whether his kindness came with conditions. It was a look Jack recognized from the wild horses he occasionally rehabilitated, creatures that had known human cruelty and expected more of the same. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, pattering against the windows like nature's confirmation that she had arrived at the right place at the right time. 3 days had passed since Jack found the girl by his fence. She still hadn't spoken a word, but she hadn't left either. He'd given her the spare bedroom that once belonged to his son Michael, now living in Seattle with his own family. The room remained largely unchanged, fishing trophies on the shelf, faded posters of 90s rock bands on the walls, a patchwork quilt Sarah had made still draped across the twin bed. The girl slept most of the first day, her body reclaiming what exhaustion had stolen. Jack had called Dr. Martinez from town, an old friend who made house calls without asking too many questions. The doctor had examined the girl while Jack waited outside, confirming what he suspected: malnutrition, exhaustion, and some fading bruises that made the doctor's mouth tighten into a grim line. "She needs rest, food, and time," Dr. Martinez had told him. "And maybe someone who won't give up on her." Jack had removed the note from her jacket while she slept that first night. "She's a thief. Don't trust her." The handwriting was neat, deliberate, an adult script. He tucked it into his pocket, deciding that whoever wrote it had already done enough damage. By the second morning, the girl had begun following Jack around the ranch, watching his daily chores with curious eyes. She kept a careful distance, but her interest was evident in the way she observed his movements, studied his techniques. Rusty had taken to trailing behind her, as if appointed her personal guardian. Jack narrated his work, filling the silence between them with explanations about caring for horses, mending fences, and checking on pregnant heifers. Whether she was listening or not, Jack couldn't tell, but it felt good to talk to someone again, even if they didn't talk back. "Cattle's the main business," he explained as they walked the property line, checking for breaks in the fence after the storm. "But we've got some horses too. My wife Sarah, she loved horses. Taught riding lessons to kids from town." He paused, running a hand along the weathered fence post. "Don't do that anymore. But we still have 4 horses in the stable. Good animals." The girl reached out tentatively, touching the rough wood of the fence. It was the first voluntary contact he'd seen her make with anything on the ranch besides food. Jack showed her how to check for loose wires, how to hammer in a staple to secure them. She watched intently, then mimicked his movements with surprising precision when he offered her the hammer. They worked side by side through the morning, the only sounds the metallic ping of the hammer and the distant lowing of cattle. That night, Jack made stew, Sarah's recipe, with tender chunks of beef and root vegetables from the garden she'd planted years ago and that he still maintained. The girl ate 2 bowls, her movements less frantic than before but still focused, as if each meal might be her last. Jack pretended not to notice when she slipped a dinner roll into her pocket. On this third morning, Jack was in the barn when he heard the crash. He rushed back to the house to find the girl frozen in the kitchen, a broken picture frame at her feet. Sarah's face smiled up from the cracked glass. A photo from their 20th anniversary, her laugh captured forever as she leaned against their favorite oak tree. "I'm sorry," the girl whispered, her first words so soft Jack almost missed them. "She speaks," Jack said, kneeling to pick up the frame, carefully removing the photo from the broken glass. "Don't worry about it. It's just a frame. I was just," she started, her voice rough from disuse. "Looking for food?" Jack finished for her. He'd noticed the diminishing contents of the pantry, the carefully rationed disappearance of non-perishables: crackers, dried fruit, granola bars. The preparations of someone ready to run again. She nodded, eyes downcast, her shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. "Got a name?" he asked, setting the photo on the counter. A long pause filled the kitchen, punctuated only by the ticking of the old wall clock that had hung there since Jack's grandparents' time. "Maya," she finally said. "Well, Maya, I'm Jack. And around here you don't have to sneak food. You just ask." He opened the refrigerator. "How about a sandwich?" As Maya ate, Jack sat across from her at the kitchen table. The morning sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes that were only now beginning to fade. Rusty lay at her feet, his head on his paws, watching her with attentive eyes. "That note on your jacket. Want to tell me about that?" Maya stared at her plate. "My stepdad," she said finally. "He kicked me out. Said I stole money from his wallet." Her voice hardened. "I didn't. Where's your mom?" "Left last year. Said she couldn't handle it anymore." Maya's matter-of-fact tone carried the weight of someone who'd learned to expect disappointment. "How'd you end up here?" "Middle of nowhere Montana isn't exactly on the bus route. Hitched rides. Was trying to get to my aunt in Billings." Jack nodded, processing this information. "Well, you're about 60 miles short." "I know," Maya said. Got dropped off at the highway intersection. Was walking when it got dark. She picked at the crust of her sandwich. Last driver was weird. Kept asking questions. I got out early. Jack felt a chill at what might have happened if she hadn't trusted her instincts. Too many missing posters on too many small-town bulletin boards told stories of kids who hadn't been so fortunate. Smart move, he said simply. Maya looked up, surprised by his response. Jack had questions, about her stepdad, about why she hadn't called her aunt, about whether anyone was looking for her. But the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hands trembled slightly told him those questions could wait. Tell you what, he said instead. Weather report says we're getting an early snowstorm tonight. How about you stay here, get some proper rest, and tomorrow we can figure out next steps. Maya's eyes met his, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda. Finding none, she gave a small nod. Good, Jack said, standing. Now come on. If you're gonna stay here, might as well make yourself useful. I've got horses that need feeding. For the first time since her arrival, Maya's expression shifted from wariness to something like interest. Horses. Jack nodded. 4 of them. Old Thunder's the oldest, he was Sarah's. Then there's Penny, Domino, and the young one, Whisper. She's still getting used to the saddle. As they walked to the stables, Jack noticed Maya's stride lengthening, matching his for the first time. The corners of her mouth turned up slightly when the horses nickered in greeting. It wasn't quite a smile, but Jack recognized it for what it was, the first fragile tendril of trust taking root. The predicted snowstorm arrived with a vengeance, dropping 8 inches overnight and effectively isolating the ranch for the next several days. The world outside the farmhouse windows transformed into a canvas of white, beautiful in its starkness but treacherous to navigate. Jack spent the mornings clearing paths to the barn and checking on the livestock, while Maya surprised him by volunteering to help with the indoor chores, washing dishes, sweeping floors, and even attempting to cook simple meals. During this time, Jack and Maya fell into an unexpected routine. She helped with the morning chores, proving surprisingly capable with the animals. The horses especially seemed to respond to her quiet presence. Whisper, the skittish young mare that typically shied away from strangers, allowed Maya to stroke her nose on the second day. By the 4th, the horse was following her around the paddock like an oversized puppy. You've got away with them, Jack observed, watching from the fence as Maya brushed Whisper's mane. Sarah was like that. Said horses could smell fear and kindness equally well. Maya's hands paused briefly at the mention of Sarah. What happened to her? She asked, the question hanging in the cold air between them. Jack leaned against the fence post. Cancer. Pancreatic. By the time they caught it, not much to be done. He looked out across the snow-covered pastures. 3 years this past August. Maya nodded, resuming her brushing. My real dad died when I was 6. Car accident. It was the first personal information she'd volunteered without prompting. Jack recognized the offering for what it was, a tentative step toward trust. That's tough, he said simply. You remember him? Some. Maya's voice was soft. He taught me to ride a bike. Had a big laugh. Mom was different when he was around. Jack nodded, understanding how grief could reshape a person. After Sarah died, he'd retreated into himself, speaking only when necessary, focusing on the physical labor of the ranch to avoid the emptiness of the house. It had taken a year before he could look at her photos without his chest constricting. My stepdad came along when I was 8, Maya continued. He was okay at first. Then he lost his job. Started drinking. She shrugged, the gesture too world-weary for someone so young. You know how it goes. Jack did know. Rural Montana had its share of hard stories. Good people broken by circumstance, families splintered by addiction and poverty. He'd seen childhood friends disappear into bottles, marriages crumble under the weight of financial strain. The isolation that made this land so beautiful could also magnify its hardships. Mom just checked out, Maya said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. Like she wasn't really there anymore. Then one day she actually wasn't. Left a note saying she needed to find herself. Never said goodbye to me. In the paddock, Whisper nudged Maya's shoulder gently as if sensing her distress. The girl leaned into the contact, her forehead resting against the horse's neck. Jack taught her how to make his famous chili that afternoon, a recipe passed down from his own father. The kitchen filled with the aroma of spices as snow continued to fall outside, insulating them from the world beyond the ranch. Maya chopped vegetables with careful precision, following Jack's instructions with the same focused attention she'd shown with the horses. On the 5th day, as they sat by the fireplace after dinner, Jack finally broached the subject they'd been avoiding. We need to call your aunt, he said. She's probably worried sick. Maya stared into the flames. I don't have her number. What's her name? We can look her up. Pause. Ellen Reeves. Jack nodded, making a mental note. And your stepdad? Police reports. Maya's face hardened. He wouldn't report me missing. Probably celebrating that I'm gone. That bad, huh? Worse, she said quietly. The firelight flickered across her face, illuminating a small scar near her temple that Jack hadn't noticed before. She caught him looking and absently brushed her hair forward to cover it. Jack recognized the look in her eyes, the same haunted expression his wife Sarah had carried when they first met, fresh from her own troubled home. He'd spent years helping Sarah work through those ghosts, and the thought of another child bearing similar wounds made his chest tighten. My wife, Jack said, gesturing to the photo he'd placed on the mantel, came from a rough situation too. Never talked about it much, but I could tell. Some people shouldn't be parents. Maya looked up at him. What was she like? Sarah? Jack smiled. Stubborn as hell. Could outride anyone in 3 counties. Had this laugh that'd make the birds stop singing to listen. His voice softened. She'd have liked you. Why? She had a soft spot for strays. Animals, people, didn't matter. Said everyone deserves a second chance. Jack reached for the photo, running his thumb along the edge of the frame. We tried to have kids for years. When it didn't happen, we looked into adoption. Then Sarah got sick. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire and the occasional whine from Rusty, who lay curled at Maya's feet. The dog had taken to her completely, abandoning his usual spot by Jack's chair in favor of the newcomer. Maya was quiet for a long moment. The thief thing, it wasn't true. He was drunk, couldn't remember where he spent his money. Always blamed me. I figured as much, Jack said. People who pin notes like that on kids aren't usually the reliable sort. He hit me sometimes, she said, the words tumbling out now. My mom knew but didn't stop it. Then she just left. Jack nodded, fighting to keep his expression neutral despite the anger building inside him. That why you ran? He got fired again. Came home drunk. I locked myself in my room, but he broke the door. Maya's voice was flat, detached. I pushed past him, grabbed what I could, and ran. He chased me halfway down the street, screaming that I'd stolen from him. Pinned that note on me before I got away. How long were you on the road before you got here? 4 days, Maya said. Slept in a bus station the first night. Then behind a diner. Then under a highway overpass. She looked down at her hands. I called my aunt from a gas station, but her number was disconnected. I remembered her address in Billings, so I just kept going. Jack stood up, adding another log to the fire. The warmth seemed to push back against the chill her story had brought into the room. Well, you're safe now. Tomorrow, if the roads are clear enough, we'll drive into town. Call your aunt, see what she says. Maya looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. You believe me? Kid, I've spent 40 years raising cattle. I can spot bull from a mile away. Jack smiled. Get some rest. We've got early chores tomorrow. As Maya climbed the stairs to her borrowed bedroom, Rusty trailing faithfully behind her, Jack remained by the fire. The girl's story had unearthed memories he'd worked hard to bury, of Sarah's nightmares, of the phone calls from her father that would leave her shaking, of the years it took before she could talk about her childhood without her voice breaking. That night, Jack sat at his kitchen table looking through old photo albums. Pictures of him and Sarah, of their son Michael growing up, of holidays and ordinary days that had seemed so commonplace then but felt precious now. He wondered what Sarah would tell him to do about Maya, though he already knew the answer. What would you do, Sarah? He murmured to the empty kitchen. The house creaked in the wind, snow tapping against the windows like gentle fingers. Jack could almost hear Sarah's voice. You already know, Jack. You're just looking for permission. He closed the photo album, decision made. The drive into Riverdale, the nearest town to Jack's ranch, took nearly an hour on roads still partially covered with snow. The plow had made a single pass down the main highway, leaving behind narrow lanes bordered by towering walls of white. Jack's truck navigated the treacherous conditions with the steady confidence of a vehicle that had seen decades of Montana winters. Maya sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching the Montana landscape pass by. Her borrowed clothes, an old flannel of Michael's and a pair of jeans Jack had found in a box of Sarah's things, hung loosely on her frame. But her face had lost the hollow, haunted look it had worn when she first arrived. Town's not much, Jack warned as they approached Riverdale. One main street, couple hundred people. Everybody knows everybody's business. Sounds like Idaho, Maya said. Most small towns are the same that way. Jack pulled into the sheriff's office parking lot, a modest brick building that also housed the town's small library and community center. Lisa, Deputy Collins, she's good people. Known her since high school. Inside, the office smelled of coffee and paper. Deputy Lisa Collins, a woman in her mid-50s with practical short hair and alert eyes, looked up from her desk with surprise. Jack Harmon, she said, rising to greet him. Didn't expect to see you till the spring thaw. Her gaze fell on Maya, standing slightly behind Jack. And who's this? This is Maya, Jack said. Found her on my property 5 days ago. Need some help. Deputy Collins nodded, gesturing for them to follow her into a small conference room where a coffee maker gurgled in the corner. Why don't you start from the beginning? For the next hour, Deputy Collins listened to their story with a professional detachment that softened when Maya described her home situation. The girl spoke more than she had in the past 5 days combined, gaining confidence as Jack nodded encouragingly beside her. When she showed the deputy the fading bruises on her arms, Jack had to look away, his jaw clenched tight. I'll need to file a report, Deputy Collins said. And contact Child Protective Services. The mention of CPS made Maya tense beside Jack. What about her aunt in Billings? Jack asked. We'll need to verify that relationship, make sure the aunt is willing and able to take custody. The deputy glanced at Maya. In the meantime, she'll need to go to a temporary placement. She can stay with me, Jack said firmly. Deputy Collins raised an eyebrow. Jack, there are procedures. Lisa, you've known me 30 years. My ranch is 15 miles from your house. You think there's a safer place for her than with me until this gets sorted? Lisa looked between them, taking in Maya's tight grip on the edge of her chair and the protective stance Jack had unconsciously adopted. After a moment of consideration, she nodded. I'll need to make some calls, pull some strings. No promises. That's all I'm asking, Jack said. While the deputy made her calls, Jack and Maya waited in the station's break room. A dusty television in the corner played a local news broadcast with the volume low. Maya's leg bounced nervously under the table, a rhythmic movement that betrayed her anxiety. What if my aunt doesn't want me? She asked quietly. Jack had been wondering the same thing, but he kept his voice steady. Then we figure something else out, he said. One step at a time. The call to Ellen Reeves revealed both good and bad news. Maya's aunt had indeed been searching for her, filing a missing person report in their home state of Idaho. She wanted Maya to live with her, but legal hurdles remained. Maya's stepdad had reported her as a runaway and was demanding her return, not out of concern, the aunt explained, but to maintain his welfare benefits. It could take weeks to sort this out legally, Deputy Collins explained when she returned to the break room. Maybe months if he fights it. Jack nodded, processing the information. The thought of Maya being forced back into an abusive home made his stomach turn. Then she stays with me until it's resolved. Jack, Deputy Collins began. I've got the space, Lisa. Got the time. And that girl needs stability. Jack lowered his voice. You saw those bruises? You gonna tell me the system's gonna do better by her than I can? Lisa Collins had been in law enforcement long enough to know the limitations of the system she served. She'd seen children shuttled between foster homes, cases backlogged for months, overworked social workers trying to manage impossible caseloads. And she'd known Jack Harmon for decades, had seen him raise his son into a good man, had watched him care for Sarah through her illness with unwavering devotion. Let me make a few more calls, she said finally. No promises, but I'll see what I can do. After signing temporary emergency custody papers, a process expedited by Deputy Collins's influence and Jack's standing in the community, they left the sheriff's office with a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following week. Before they left, Lisa pulled Jack aside. You sure about this, Jack? Taking care of a teenager isn't the same as running a ranch. Jack's gaze drifted to Maya, who was examining a bulletin board covered with community announcements and missing person flyers. Not sure about much these days, Lisa. But I'm sure that girl needs someone in her corner. On the drive back to the ranch, Maya broke the silence. Thank you. For what? For believing me. For helping. Jack nodded, eyes on the road. The snow had started again, fat flakes catching in the truck's headlights. When Sarah and I first tried to adopt, we got turned down. Too old, they said. Then we tried fostering. Had a boy stay with us for almost a year. Michael, that's my son, he was already grown and gone, but this kid, he filled the house with noise again. Then his mother got out of rehab and he went back to her. Jack cleared his throat. Sometimes people come into your life when you both need each other. Doesn't have to be permanent to be important. Maya looked out at the vast Montana landscape, snow-covered and beautiful in its emptiness. The setting sun cast long purple shadows across the white fields, turning the world into a watercolor of twilight hues. But what if I want it to be permanent? Jack glanced at her, surprised by the directness of her question. In the 5 days since her arrival, Maya had revealed herself to be observant, resilient, and unexpectedly forthright. Let's take it one day at a time. Your aunt seems like good people. She is, Maya admitted. But she lives in an apartment in the city. Has 2 jobs. She'd try but it wouldn't be like this, Jack finished for her, understanding the unspoken concern. The vastness of the ranch, the rhythms of rural life, the connection to the animals, these weren't things easily replicated in a Billings apartment. Maya nodded, looking down at her hands. I've never really had a home. Not a real one. Mom and I moved a lot before she met him. And after, it was just a place to sleep. Never felt safe. The simple admission hit Jack harder than he expected. He thought of his own son, raised with the security of the ranch, with parents who had created a home built on love and stability. The contrast between Michael's childhood and Maya's struck him as profoundly unjust. Well, Jack said after a long pause, ranch always needs an extra pair of hands. And that spare room isn't doing anyone any good sitting empty. It wasn't a promise. They both knew there were too many variables, too many legal hurdles ahead, but it was something to hold on to. Something that felt, for the first time in a long while for both of them, like hope. As they turned onto the long driveway leading to the ranch, the house came into view, windows glowing with welcoming light. Jack had left lamps on that morning, a habit he'd developed since Sarah died. Coming home to a dark house had felt too much like surrendering to the emptiness. Now, with Maya beside him, the light seemed less like a defense against loneliness and more like a beacon guiding them both home. Spring came early to Montana that year. The snow melted, revealing patches of green that spread across the ranch like hope taking physical form. 6 months had passed since Jack found Maya by his fence, and much had changed. The girl who had arrived silent and starving had transformed. Regular meals had filled out her frame, and working alongside Jack had built muscle and confidence. Her dark hair, now healthy and often braided, caught the sunlight as she moved through her morning chores with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. The legal battle had been messy. Maya's stepdad initially fought to regain custody, motivated not by care but by the government benefits tied to her. When Jack heard the man was coming to Montana for the hearing, he'd spent the night before pacing the kitchen, wrestling with a rage he hadn't felt since the days after Sarah's diagnosis, when he'd railed against an uncaring universe that would take her from him too soon. He won't get near her, Lisa Collins had promised, stopping by the ranch the evening before the hearing. Not while I'm around. The deputy's visits had become regular over the months, her professional interest in Maya's case evolving into something more personal. Jack had pretended not to notice how she always brought Maya's favorite desserts, or how her gaze lingered on him when she thought he wasn't looking. But when faced with Maya's testimony and evidence of his abuse, coupled with character witnesses from Jack's community vouching for the positive change in Maya's life, the courts had ruled in favor of Ellen Reeves gaining primary custody. Maya's stepdad had left the courthouse without looking at her, his lawyer already negotiating a settlement that would keep him from facing charges for neglect and abuse. What no one had expected was the arrangement that followed. Ellen Reeves had visited the ranch several times during the legal proceedings, seeing firsthand the bond that had formed between her niece and the widowed rancher. Ellen, recognizing that her small apartment and demanding work schedule weren't ideal for a teenager who had finally found stability, had proposed an unconventional solution. Maya would legally live with her aunt, but would stay primarily at Jack's ranch with regular visits to Billings. She needs both of us, Ellen had told Jack over coffee at the kitchen table. She needs this place, this life you've given her. But she needs family too. Jack had understood. Blood mattered, connections mattered. And Ellen Reeves, with her kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, was clearly cut from the same cloth as her niece. Today was moving day, not out but in. Jack and Maya were clearing out the last boxes from the spare room, which was becoming permanently hers. The walls, once covered with Michael's old posters, now displayed photographs of the ranch's horses that Maya had taken with an old camera Jack had found in the attic. A bookshelf held volumes on horse care and Montana wildlife, alongside the novels Lisa brought her from the town library. Found this, Jack said, holding up a faded baseball mitt. Michael's. From when he was about your age. Maya took it, turning it over in her hands. The leather was cracked with age but still supple. Does he mind? Me having his room? Are you kidding? He's been after me for years to get some help around here. Jack smiled. He's bringing the grandkids out for the 4th of July. Wants to meet you. He didn't mention how his son had choked up on the phone when Jack told him about Maya, how Michael had said, "Mom would be so proud of you, Dad." Maya nodded, trying to hide her nervousness at the prospect of meeting Jack's family. Over the months, she'd grown comfortable with their routine. Early mornings with the animals, school in Riverdale where she was slowly making friends, afternoons helping Jack with ranch work. She'd even started riding, showing a natural affinity for horses that Jack attributed to her patience. "You know," Jack said, watching her place the baseball mitt on her shelf, "Sarah always wanted a daughter. Had the name picked out and everything. Would have been Elizabeth after her grandmother." "Did you want a girl too?" Maya asked, arranging books on her shelf. "Wanted healthy," Jack said with a shrug. "Boy, girl, didn't matter much to me. Just wanted them to love the land like I do." Maya looked out the window at the ranch spreading out below them, the barn where she'd helped deliver a calf last month, the corral where she was learning to ride Whisper, the patch of earth she'd claimed for her own garden. "I do," she said quietly. "Love it, I mean." Jack nodded, something loosening in his chest. "Got something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box. "Was Sarah's. Think she'd want you to have it." Maya opened the box to find a silver pendant in the shape of a horse. The metal caught the afternoon light streaming through the window, glinting like a captured star. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Sarah wore it every day. Said it reminded her that there's always somewhere to run to, not just from." Jack cleared his throat. "Figured you might appreciate that sentiment." Maya fastened the necklace around her neck, fingering the pendant. Her eyes, when they met Jack's, were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you."